Hi, welcome to today's On This Day in Tudor History with me, Claire Ridgway. Now, on this day in Tudor history, the 14th of December 1558, just under a month after her death, Queen Mary I, daughter of King Henry VIII and his first wife Catherine of Aragon, was buried at Westminster Abbey in London. Mary, who had only reigned for just over 5 years, had died on the 17th of November 1558, and her half-sister Elizabeth had become Queen Elizabeth I. Although Mary had left instructions in her will for her mother Catherine of Aragon's remains to be exhumed and brought to London from Peterborough so that mother and daughter could be buried together, her instructions were ignored. Mary was buried by herself. On the 13th of December 1558, Mary's remains had been processed from St James's Palace to Westminster, and in his diary, Henry Machin, a merchant tailor and citizen of London, recorded that her coffin was carried by chariot, and there was a painted effigy of her, which he described as adorned with crimson velvet, and her crown on her head, her sceptre on her hand, and many goodly rings on her fingers. He records that at the door of the abbey, Mary's coffin was met by 4 bishops and the abbot, mitred in copes and incensing the body. Her remains lay there all night under her hearse, and her grace was watched, and there were 100 poor men in good black gowns bearing long torches with hoods on their heads and arms on them, and about her the guard bearing staff torches in black coats, and all the way chandlers having torches to give them that had their torches burnt out. Mary was buried the following day, this day in 1558, and Machin records her funeral in his diary too. The 14th day of December was the Queen's Mass, the bells are ringing out for her, and all the lords and ladies, knights and gentlewomen did offer. And there was a man of arms and horse offered, and her coat of armour and sword and target and banner of arms and 3 standards, and all the heralds about her. And there my Lord Bishop of Winchester made the sermon, and there was offered cloth of gold and velvet, whole pieces and other things. After the mass all done, her grace was carried up to the chapel the King Henry VII builded, with bishops mitred, and all the officers went to the grave, and after they brake their staves and cast them into the grave. In the meantime, the people plucked down the cloth, every man a piece that could catch it, round about the church and the arms. And afterwards, my Lord Bishop of York, after her grace was buried, he declared a collation, and as soon as he'd made an end, all the trumpets blew a blast, and so the chief mourners and the lords and knights and the bishops with the abbot went into the abbey to dinner, and all the officers of the Queen's court. In 1606, in the reign of King James I, Elizabeth I's remains were moved from their resting place in Henry VII's vault to join her sister Mary's remains. James I erected a monument bearing Elizabeth I's effigy, but not one of Mary. And the Latin inscription on the monument can be translated as, "Partners both in throne and grave, here rest we 2 sisters, Elizabeth and Mary, in the hope of the resurrection." But I just find it sad that this shared tomb doesn't have an effigy of Mary as well. You could just look at it without reading it and without knowing who's buried there. You would just think that it had Elizabeth in it. It seems very sad. So there we go, the burial of Queen Mary I, who only sort of reigned for 5 years. That took place on this day in Tudor history in 1558. Thank you for joining me. You can subscribe by clicking round about there. You can hit the bell to be notified as these videos go live, and you can of course give me a like and leave a comment. I do appreciate you joining me for these videos. See you tomorrow. Bye bye.